analyst at RBC. Very, very happy to have on stage
Human Genome Science presentation.
As well as David Southwell from Human Genome.
Thank you for having us, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a whole page of questions and things I'd love to press you on, but I'm going to turn it over to you just for a couple minutes to give us an introduction about Human Genome, who you are, what's going on, and what's going on this year.
Well, the most immediate event that we expect to happen is on Thursday of next week. We have our first, we have a PDUFA date for a drug that we have called Benlysta, which, if approved, would be the first drug to be approved for lupus in over 50 years. And I should highlight, by the way, that I'm going to make forward-looking statements, and you should refer to our SEC filings. But that's very exciting for us. It's something we've been working on for a long time. We identified the cytokine, the autoantibody that is responsible in patients with lupus. We then developed the antibody that worked against that cytokine, and we took it through 2 phase 3 trials ourselves. And the first of those trials read out in the middle of 2009. And it was very positive. We then followed that up with another phase 2 trial. So these are the first successful phase 3 trials in lupus. Lupus is a condition that is very difficult to study because it's an autoimmune condition that affects where the autoantibodies essentially attack the organs, and they can attack different organs at different times. And so it's very hard to study it because the symptoms of different lupus patients are very different. And we were helpful in coming up with an endpoint that allowed us to study the disease, and which is one of the things that's really, I think, made this a groundbreaking drug. So we filed the BLA last year. We had our initial PDUFA date was in December. We got a 3-month delay. The panel voted 13-2 to approve the drug, which we were excited about. So we'll be hearing back from the FDA next week. This is a condition that affects approximately 325,000 patients in the United States, of which 200,000 are moderate to severe. The common theme of all of those 325,000 is that whether they started out at a dermatologist or a general practitioner, they wind up at a rheumatologist because it's a disease that really isn't well understood by the practice outside of rheumatology. So that presents a really good commercial opportunity for us because it's a relatively concentrated group of physicians. There's about 3,500 rheumatologists in the country, of which about 1,200 consider themselves lupus specialists. So that enables us to really narrow it down, and we expect to launch the product with approximately 200 sales reps divided between us and our partner, GlaxoSmithKline. We have a fairly unique agreement with GSK where it is truly a 50-50 partnership worldwide on this drug. We expect to we will book the sales in the United States. They'll book the sales in Europe, but we truly split the profits on this. So we have a very good working relationship with GSK that goes in from the commercial side to the finance side to the R&D side. We have a very good relationship with them. We expect to launch that. We hope to launch that around the end of this quarter, and we're certainly looking forward to that, and we're all geared up and ready for it. Behind that, we have another major product that is partnered with GlaxoSmithKline, and that's a cardiovascular drug called daraplatin. The mechanism is that it's what's called an LP-PLA2 inhibitor, and which is a new mechanism for the treatment of cardiovascular disease. It's thought to be a very exciting mechanism. This is certainly one of GSK's top priorities. They're running 2 large phase 3 trials at the moment. They're running trials in about 27,000 patients.
27,000 patients running trials.
Measuring adverse cardiovascular events. So they're essentially waiting for 1,500 people in the first trial to have either heart attacks or strokes, and then they'll measure how many of them were on standard of care plus daraplatin versus standard of care alone. And we expect that trial to read out somewhere around the end of next year. It all depends, of course, when these events happen. But that is a big potential upside for us We have a 10% royalty on that product, and we also
about
have a 20%
future pipelines.
co-promote option in the U.S. We have a 10% royalty worldwide and a 20% co-promote option in North America and Europe. So we get a very significant portion of the profits of that drug, and that could be a big one for us. And then we have a product called albiglutide, which is a GLP-1 inhibitor for diabetes that we're also developing with GSK. From the perspective of our own, both duraplidib and albiglutide are exclusively being developed by GSK, and we get payments for it. We have our own R&D effort that's continuing. The main focus of that is to build out on the Benlysta franchise. So that consists of a couple of things. One is a novel dosage form. So Benlysta is an infused drug, and we're developing it as a subcutaneous drug, and we're going into late-stage trials on that this year. So we're developing that as a sub-Q formulation, which will help us to address the milder lupus patients who don't want to go into a rheumatologist's office for infusions every month. So that'll get us into the 125,000 patients that we didn't test in our phase 3 trials, the ones that are mild as opposed to moderate to severe. And then behind that, there are many other B-cell mediated diseases which could well be helped by Benlysta. The first of those is the first two that we're really focused on are vasculitis and post-renal transplant, which are two additional sets of patients. And then we have some other diseases.
Patient demographic?
If you add up the patients from all of these, you get to a potential market of over 1 million patients. But obviously, all of
patient
these
demographic
for us to be able to address all of those. One other thing is we're very well financed. We ended last year with about $930 million worth of cash. We expect to end this year with between 550 and
cash balance sheets are strong.
So we're pretty well financed.
So next week's a big week, and indeed.
Next week is the biggest week ever.
But assuming a positive scenario, we're going to have this product label, and docs are going to look at this product label and determine how to use Benlysta. So what type of things do you think that
risk management label for administration of Benlysta with the doctor community,
for the lupus community and for commercial adoption? What are the things that you think we should consider in that label?
Well, it's difficult for me to really answer that question because obviously we're getting close enough to the PDUFA date that it would be inappropriate to comment on discussions with the FDA. But what we've always said is that we want to be able to treat
everything that StockMarketFunding.com says is they work around these label issuing
moderate to severe
risk management.
They were
many months in advance.
Autoantibody positive. They included patients that on the lower end, they included patients that were autoantibody positive and had a positive Selena-Sledi score. On the upper end, we included patients that had some manifestations of lupus that can become quite severe, including CNS lupus and kidney involvement. Now, one of the confusions in the street, to some extent, was the patient inclusions on the kidney involvement, because we excluded patients that had got so severe that they needed drugs like IV Cytoxan. Now, what actually happens in real life is that a patient may progress and get kidney involvement to the point where they need these very powerful drugs. And at that point, we just haven't tested Benlysta against those because they really need something very powerful to get them back to maintenance therapy. But what typically happens is patients will progress through that. They'll then recover back to the point where maintenance therapy is appropriate. So they are candidates for Benlysta. They're just not candidates for Benlysta while they're also on IV Cytoxan. So we tested all these patients. We think we had very broad inclusion criteria.
Diversification.
We tested Asians, African Americans.
Diversification.
We didn't exclude
culture
any races.
Diversification.
It was primarily women, because women primarily have lupus. It was about 95% female.
When you look at the comments and sort of the things that came out of the panel, which I think are some of the things that the FDA is considering as part of their 3-month delay. How do you think that the FDA is thinking about this comments from regarding the African American population, the severe renal population? Is it fair to think? Should I think that these things should be addressed in the label?
Well, panels are always near-death experiences.
Labeling issue, risk management, labeling,
probably
safety
one of the most
issue.
stressful things you can go through as a pharmaceutical executive is an advisory panel. From the perspective of the FDA, again, it's sort of inappropriate to comment on where they're at, but what's important coming out of the panel was that we had a 14-to-1 vote that the drug
14-to-1 victory.
And we had a 13-to-2 vote that Benlysta should be approved, which was essentially the question that was asked at the end. So in terms of inclusion and exclusion criteria, you mentioned African Americans. Mm-hmm. In our phase 2 study, African Americans did better than the overall patient population. In phase 3, in Bliss 76, which was our U.S. and European phase 3 study, they did worse. Mm-hmm. So we have sort of confounding data. But we had a relatively small number of African Americans in both of those studies relative to the overall study population. So it's our view is that it's very hard to draw any conclusions from that, and we're very interested in seeing whether there are any differences in African American use of the drug once it's approved, because we're just
scalability in the African American community DNA
from our studies to indicate that there would be.
So I've talked to lupus experts. I know a lot of people have talked to experts. What kind of feedback have you gotten with regards to how this drug would be used in their populations of SLE patients?
Well, the lupus experts that studied the drug seem to be very excited about this. I mean, I think it's fair to say that our commercial group is getting
fair to say that many lives can be treated.
We're very, very excited to have this drug on the market. In terms of how it's used, that will very much depend on the rheumatologist. There will be undoubtedly rheumatologists who will want to start out on one patient and see how that patient progresses before they move on to others. There are others who may be very familiar with the product who want to put a lot of their patients onto it. Some of those constraints have to do